Listen, you're not here by chance. No one reaches this voice without having you've been called. There's something inside you that's been stirring for years, an ancient murmur that belongs neither to your mind nor your history. It is a seed that recalls the light from where wine. This knowledge is not new. It was not written by men nor discovered through civilizations. It is the current that has sustained everything that exists since the beginning of time. Time. Every word you're about to hear is a key. Every silence between words is a door, and if you dare once you cross it, you'll never sleep the same way again. The 33rd degree does not belong to no temple, no lodge, no foreign god. It is the fire that burns. In the center of your chest, waiting for you to remember who you are. I won't teach you. Nothing you don't already possess. I'll only help you remember what your soul kept hidden under 1,000 layers of oblivion. Before moving forward, be silent, breathe. Let the noise of the world fades away for a moment, because this journey isn't made with the ears, but with the soul. Prepare yourself for listen with what you cannot see. When the mind surrenders, the heart understands. When the ego dissolves, the spirit takes over. You have entered the initiation of the inner fire. From this, for a moment you are not a listener, you are an initiate, and everything said from that moment on. What you hear now will resonate in the very foundations of your being. The seal is broken. The journey has begun. First revelation, the mirror of infinity. Listen with the soul, not ears. The words you are receiving are not new. They are just ancient truths echoing within you. It is no coincidence that you are here at this moment in time. Life hasn't brought you to these lines by chance. Something in you, more deeper than the mind, it has led you to the door that now opens before your consciousness. You are entering the territory where reality ceases to be a surface and becomes a mirror, because that is precisely what it is, universe, an infinite mirror that reflects with absolute precision the content, vibrational frequency of your soul. From the dawn of existence, the original source, that which some call God, others energy, others consciousness, looked at itself herself, and from that gaze everything that exists was born. Creation was not an act of not to do, but to reflect. In that divine reflection you were born. You are the gaze of the fountain, contemplating itself from an individual point of view. And yet you have forgotten that what you see outside is nothing other than yourself, unfolded in infinite forms. The maras, the star you observe, your smile and the insult you receive are reflections of the same fire that burns within you. Center. There is no outside. There is no them. There are only echoes of you resonating in different frequencies of being. The world is an exact mirror. It doesn't give you what you desire, returns to you what you are. Every thought you hold, every emotion you nurture, every judgment you repeat, is imprinted on the invisible fabric of reality and returns to you. You in the form of experience. Nothing escapes this law. Life neither punishes nor rewards. It only responds. If you cultivate a lack of energy, the mirror will reflect back situations that confirm it. If you cultivate gratitude, it will show you abundance. This is how the oldest law of the cosmos operates, the law of correspondence. But the ego, blinded by its own narrative, insists on blaming the world, on the rest are left to chance, without understanding that the world does nothing more than reflect what the soul projects without. To know this, to understand this revelation, is to accept the most difficult of truths. That everything that happens in your life originated from you, even what you most reject. The wounds didn't reach. It's not to punish you, but to point out the corners you haven't yet illuminated. Betrayal shows you where you betray yourself. To yourself. Abandonment teaches you where you've left yourself alone. Rejection reveals where you haven't known how to love yourself. Every face that hurts you is a fragment of your own, a face pleading for reconciliation. Life is a compassionate mirror. Although its compassion sometimes disguises itself as chaos, observe closely what bothers you about others is actually a dormant vibration within you. The human mind is adept at projecting its shadow and calling enemy that which reflects its fear. But the initiate, the having awakened to the wisdom of the mirror, one no longer reacts. One contemplates. Instead of asking why this is happening to me, I ask myself what part of me is speaking through it. And in doing so, the spell of suffering begins to unravel, because pain can only exist as long as its meaning is not understood. Origin, the mirror of infinity, is exact, relentless, but also infinitely loving. He doesn't distort, he doesn't invent, he doesn't judge. It simply returns what you send out exactly as you send it out, and it does so you can see yourself, so you remember who you are, and can create consciously. The universe is not your enemy. It's your echo. When you scream fear, it answers you with fearful ways. When you sing of love, it answers you with miracles. All that what happens in your world is your voice resonating in the fabric of creation. There is a sacred moment on the path of the soul in which one ceases to struggle with the reflection. Until then, they try to change the mirror by breaking the surface, hitting the faces that they appear in it, fleeing from images they don't understand. But the mirror cannot be changed from the outside. Only it changes when the one being reflected changes. That is true alchemy. None. External force can alter reality as long as the internal remains the same. All real change begins in silent thought, in the emotion you choose to hold, in the vibration that you decide to emit. When you understand this, something inside you is released. There is no more victims nor executioners, only conscience in varying degrees of recognition. You understand that nothing has happened against you, but because of you, that every loss was a teacher in disguise, for whom even tears had a purpose, to polish the look in the mirror until you can see yourself clearly. Then a quiet gratitude arises, a serene love for all that's what it was, because you see perfection even in what hurt. The initiate of 33rd grade walks through life knowing that every look, every event, every coincidence is a conversation with the mirror. It no longer looks outside for what it only finds. It can be found within. It no longer asks for miracles, it becomes the miracle. Every thought is sown with the aware that the universe will hear him, and each word is spoken with reverence, knowing that the echo it will return amplified. It lives in coherence because it knows that reality is its own reflection. And so, little by little, the mirror ceases to be an enemy and becomes a portal. When the soul no longer projects fear, the reflection becomes transparent. The world then doesn't separate you from the divine. It reveals it to you. In every person you see the spark of the same consciousness that dwells within you. In every event you recognize the pulse of the same intelligence that guides your heart. And when there is no longer inside or outside, the mirror dissolves because you have remembered the oldest and most forgotten truth of all. You are not in of the universe. The universe is within you. That is the first revelation of 33rd degree, the beginning of awakening, the key that unlocks all others. Second revelation, the law of the sacred echo. The voice of the universe is not with your ears, but with your conscience. It is a murmur that uses no words, a vibration that responds to every thought, every feeling, every impulse of your heart. The universe, he doesn't stay silent, he's always talking to you, but his language isn't that of neither phrases nor promises matter. Their language is resonance. What you emit, it comes back. What you give, returns. What you sow in the invisible field of existence multiplies in the harvest of your experiences. This is the law of the sacred echo, the law that unites everything with everything, that transforms each breath into a conversation with eternity. Imagine for a moment that life would be a vast temple made of sound. Every thought that crosses your mind vibrates within its walls and vault. Cosmic returns to you with mathematical precision the note that you yourself played. There is no mistake. The echo never fails. If you spread fear, the echo will bring it back. Fear. If you radiate love, the echo envelops you in love. If you complain, life. It gives you more reasons to complain. If you're grateful, the universe opens doors for you, so that you may continue to give thanks. This is how everything communicates with you, not through chance, but through a perfect symmetry that obeys the vibration it chooses to sustain. The human soul, however, has become deaf to that echo. He lives believing that his thoughts die inside his head, that his emotions are ordinary, private, without understanding that every inner impulse is a wave that propagates toward infinity. Every word that you pronounce, even in solitude, it becomes vibratory geometry, in an energetic command that the universe hears. And that universe does not distinguish between good and evil, between desire and fear. It simply reflects, responds, amplifies. That's why the ancient sages, they taught that speaking creates, that the word was not communication, but creation, that silence was even a form of conversation with the source. When you understand the law of the sacred echo, you understand that power does not reside in controlling reality, but in harmonizing your vibration with what you desire. Experience. The universe doesn't obey your words, but your inner state. You can ask for peace with your mouth and express anguish with your heart, and it will be anguish that returns to you. The echo does not respond to, "It's not what you say," but what you truly are at the moment you utter it. That's why the path of the initiate is not the not empty affirmations, but total coherence between thought, emotion, and action. Pure vibration is not, he doesn't need to shout, he simply needs to be. Most men live repeating themselves, the same echoes without knowing it. They lament their fate without understanding that it is their own echo, returning to them the thoughts they sow each day. They react with anger to the reflection, believing they are victims of a hostile world, and not understanding that the world only amplifies what they themselves throw out into it, emptiness. Thus, an entire humanity lives surrounded by its own inner noise, trapped in the repetition of the waves it unconsciously emits. But he who awakens and begins to listen to the echo discovers alchemy. By changing its vibration, the entire universe changes. Tone. The echo doesn't always come in the form you expect. Sometimes your thoughts of scarcity don't. They manifest as a lack of money, but as relationships that make you feel inadequate. Sometimes your prayers for love returns in the form of loss, to teach you that the love you seek outside must first be ignited within. The law of the sacred echo does not seek. It pleases you. It seeks to elevate you. It doesn't respond to your whims, but to your conscience. It gives you exactly what you need to remember your creative power, even if your mind interprets it as an obstacle. There is a secret wisdom in everything that happens. If you could hear the echo behind every event would help you understand that life doesn't say no, but rather not yet. You resonate with that. Every denial is a call to raise your frequency. Every apparent silence is a space that existence creates, a space for you to fine-tune your inner note. And when you finally vibrate in, if it aligns with your request, the echo becomes song. Then everything flows, everything fits together, everything seems to conspire in your favor, because you're no longer sending out waves contradictory. Your inner self and the universe beat to the same melody. The uninitiate who lives from the consciousness of the echo does not seek to change anyone. He knows that the external world is only the chorus of his own inner voice, your own voice. Instead of demanding justice, cultivate understanding. Instead of to demand love, radiate love. Instead of demanding abundance, become source. He knows that every gesture is a sowing, and that life cannot be denied. Give back what you receive. Stop fighting with the world and start talking to it. He from harmony. Each breath then becomes a creative act. Each word, a sacred note. Each thought, a spark that ignites the invisible geometry of its destiny. The law of the sacred echo is not a promise, it is a vibrant mirror. It reflects with the music you compose at every moment is so precise. And when the melody becomes pure, the entire universe dances with you. There is no longer chance or chaos, only synchronicity. There is no longer distance between us, you and everything, because you understand that you have never been talking to an outsider, you've always been answering yourself. And that's the truth behind this second revelation. There is no response that wasn't first an utterance of yours. There is no event that isn't an echo of your consciousness. If you want to hear a different song, don't change the world. Change the note that you are playing. Life always responds, but it can only respond in your same tone. When the soul understands this, it's his voice softens, his mind aligns, his heart expands, and the echo that once what was confusing and chaotic is transformed into a symphony. Then the initiate ceases to ask and start listening, because you have discovered the greatest secret of all. The universe does not speak not through words, but through your own vibration. That is the sacred echo, and he who learns to listen to it, learns to create. Third revelation, the secret of non-resistance. The entire universe is held in equilibrium because nothing in it opposes nothing. The sea does not argue with the wind. Fire is not afraid to consume. Night cannot resist dawn. Everything flows, transforms, and surrenders without fail, that there exists a single atom that would attempt to halt the course of everything. Only man, with his fragmented mind and his fear of change, he tries to resist the flow of life. Suffering arises because all tension against what is engenders pain. What the soul does not accept, what it repeats, what it embraces, it transcends. The secret of non-resistance is the key of the wise, the exact point where the human will dissolves into the universal will. Understanding this does not mean surrendering like the weak who resign themselves, but surrendering like the strong, who trusts. To resist is to fight against the current, and the more you fight, the more you sink in the river of time. Ceasing to resist is not passivity, it is spiritual intelligence. It is understanding that there is a greater wisdom moving the invisible threads of your destiny, and everything that comes, no matter how much, however incomprehensible it may seem, it is a loving response from that infinite intelligence. The mind fears losing, though she doesn't understand that she never had control. She has been trained to dominate, to define, to label, to predict. But life cannot be contained by any label. Existence is vaster than any attempt to understand it. And when human beings try to possess it, life becomes heavy, uncertain, hostile. On the other hand, when you stop resisting, when you let go of the need by taking control, the universe begins to move with you, not against you. Circumstances that once seemed like walls become bridges. The delays reveal their hidden purpose. What seemed like loss is revealed as liberation. The initiate who understands the secret of non-resistance is to stop fighting with the moment. It doesn't demand that the reality resembles his desires because he has learned that reality is the very desire of the divine, expressing itself through his task is not to shape the world, but to align himself with the pulse that creates it. When the soul surrenders to that current, life ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a dance. Every event, even the queer one, becomes a teacher, because resisting is not it changes what happens, it only prolongs the lesson. Acceptance, on the other hand, opens the gateway to understanding. Accepting doesn't mean approving, it means observing, without fighting. It's saying to life, I recognize you as my reflection. I don't know why. You come in this form, but I trust your purpose is perfect. Then a miracle occurs. The suffering that once seemed unbearable dissolves into wisdom. The same fire that it used to burn, now it illuminates. The same obstacle that frustrated now teaches. Because nothing can harm you when you recognize it as part of the journey. Life isn't against you, it's just pushing you forward, your expansion. Think of water. Water doesn't fight. It has no shape of its own, and therefore that can take all forms. It falls from the mountains without resisting gravity. It curves with the river's course, penetrates the earth, evaporates into the sky. It returns like rain. It nourishes, cleanses, renews. Its power is not in imposing itself, but in flowing. That is why water conquers iron and time. Water is the teacher of the initiate. It teaches that the gentle overcomes the hardest because it knows how to wait. To be like water is the essence of non-resistance, not opposing the course of your destiny but moving with it, flexible, silent, confident. When the soul ceases to resist, something majestic occurs. The vital energy, which before it wore itself out in the struggle, now it breaks free and begins to create what once seemed impossible. It begins to open up without effort. Relationships are transformed without arguments. Projects that seemed stagnant things begin to flow. It's not magic, it's consistency. It's the law of the universe is responding to a consciousness that no longer vibrates with war. Everything you rejected ceases to haunt you, because you no longer feed it with your opposition. Fear dissolves because it has been seen. Life becomes light, not because circumstances change, but because you no longer bear the burden of having to endure them. There are those who, they believe that giving up is failing, but surrendering to the wisdom of life is the highest form of victory. The ego. It wins when it manages to impose its will. The spirit triumphs when it recognizes the greater will that guides it. In conscious surrender, the separation between the self and the whole disappears. There is no longer my plan and the plan of the universe, because they are both the same. The mind falls silent, the heart nods, and in absolute silence, the force that moves the galaxies is revealed. Non-resistance is not weakness, it is power, its purest form, because it no longer depends on struggle, but on unity. Every event you endure is etched into your body like a thorn. Every denied emotion becomes a weight, a tension. In sickness, the soul that does not surrender accumulates hardness, and that hardness manifests in the flesh. But when you let go, the body lets go too. Energy begins to flow again, the spirit breathe again. There is no possible healing without acceptance, because what is resisted persists. Healing is not. Instead of eliminating the pain, allow it to tell you what it has come to teach you. Look at your history. Remember how many times fate took you away from something you wanted, and later you understood it was necessary. How many times has a loss it revealed your true strength? How many times did a delay save your way? Life always knows more than you do. Resisting it is like closing your eyes while the sun shines. It goes away. You're only prolonging the darkness. When you surrender, the light enters on its own, alone, and that light doesn't come from outside. It's the light of your consciousness, freed from burdens, of opposing what is. Non-resistance transforms even the way you love. Love that resists, that it demands, it fears losing, it withers in anxiety. but the love that flows, that it allows, it trusts, it expands without limits. The initiate learns to love without to possess, to serve without expecting anything in return, to give without counting. He knows that everything that the gift returns multiplied, not because it demands it, but because the echo of the universe cannot leave anything untouched. Answer: to live in non-resistance is to live in absolute trust, and the trust is the highest note of human vibration, the one that opens the portals of conscious manifestation. Thus, the secret of non-resistance lies not in ceasing to act, but in acting without internal friction. It is about moving with life, not against it. It's about accepting what comes, being grateful for what goes, and to remain in the still center of yourself while everything transforms. It is to live from the understanding that nothing is broken, nothing is out of place, and that every turn of the road is leading you home, even if you don't understand the map, when the soul. Once you reach this state, stop using the word problem. Everything becomes a process. Nothing is an obstacle. Everything is instruction. Existence reveals itself as a school of light, where every circumstance has a pedagogical purpose, to teach you to remember that you and the universe are one. Then the mind falls silent, the struggle ceases, and a peace so profound ensues that it doesn't depend on anything external. It's the peace of someone who has let go of the helm and has discovered that the current always knew where it was going. That is the wisdom of the 33rd degree, learning to let go. Let life flow through you without resistance until you yourself become the current. Because whoever flows with the everything becomes everything. Whoever stops resisting begins to create. And whoever understands that nothing in the universe is against you, awaken to supreme knowledge that the will of the existence and his are one and the same. That is the secret of non-resistance, the point where the struggle ends and true freedom begins. Fourth revelation, the fire of thought. Everything you see, touch, breathe, or dream was once a thought. Before you the worlds would turn, before the stars burst into light, an idea, a silent vibration floated in. The divine mind decreed that it should be so. The universe was not built by hands, but with pure thought, thought so concentrated that it became matter. That same substance that wove the suns is what flows within you every time you think. Your mind is not a prison. It is a sacred furnace where the same fire that ignites creation burns, and yet men walk in their sleep, unaware of their power, playing with that fire, not knowing that every spark that they are launched into the ether, it becomes form, destiny, life. Thought is not an abstract current, nor a shadow that dissolves when you fall silent. It is conscious, living energy, obedient to your attention. Every thought you hold, it is a vibrational command that the universe registers and begins to reproduce. Thought is the first movement of the spirit in matter. It is the mold into which energy is poured. That is why the ancient sages taught that thinking is creating. But thinking is not the mechanical act of repeating ideas, but rather the ability to direct light. A thought with emotion is a living seed. A thought with faith is a galaxy in gestation. The human mind is a fire. If you don't direct it, it consumes. If you feed it impurity, it poisons it. But when you purify it and guide it with purpose, it becomes the instrument of the gods. Every idea you allow into your consciousness is a spark thrown into the fabric of the world. If you throw sparks of fear, will set labyrinths ablaze. If you throw sparks of love, you will ignite stars. The universe doesn't interpret your thoughts, it replicates them. That's why cultivating thought is the most important art. Elevated of the soul, the art of thinking with purity, with intention, with beauty. Imagine your mind as a forge. Every word spoken internally is a blow of the hammer, of the spirit upon the metal of reality. You strike with anger, and the metal warps. You strike with love, and the form is transformed. It beautifies. That's how you forge your life, not with events, but with the thoughts you choose to keep alive within you. External life is but an echo of that inner life, inner self. He who masters his thoughts masters his destiny, because thought it is the thread that weaves the events of time. However, the fire of thought does not distinguish between light and shadow. It burns equally at both ends. When you think from guilt, from lack, from hopelessness, that fire begins to consume your own foundations. Repeated thoughts of fear condense into density, and that density becomes matter, disease, conflict, chaos. That is why the initiate learn to observe your thoughts with the same attention an alchemist uses to watch his furnace. Don't let the fire. He doesn't let it escape. He doesn't let it go out. He takes care of it. He feeds it with firewood from the in-truth. It purifies it with the flame of consciousness. Conscious thought does not. It's an exercise in logic. It's an act of magic. When you think with intention pure geometry, you are writing geometry in the invisible substance of the cosmos. Each the idea becomes a luminous form seeking its manifestation, and if you hold it with emotion, with faith, with inner silence, the universe begins to organize itself around her. People, circumstances, coincidences, everything falls into place to give shape to the thought. Original. This is how the mystery of mental fire works. What you intensely imagine ends up coming to you because it already exists on the vibrational plane. It's just waiting for your permission to become visible. The mind's error. It is profane to believe that thoughts are harmless as long as they are not acted upon. About them. Nothing could be further from the truth. Thinking is already acting in the subtle realm. Every thought is a seed. In the quantum field, and like every seed, it germinates, grows, and blooms in its time. That is why wise people fear not so much the actions themselves as the thoughts that precede them. They know that a mind-undisciplined life is a land full of thorns, and no flower can bloom there until conscience is uprooted from it. Root out its weeds. The initiate who understands the fire of thought. She begins her inner purification. She learns to observe her thoughts without judgment, like someone who contemplates a flowing river, and over time consciously chooses what he discovers. That thought is not meant to enslave him, but to serve him. He no longer let yourself be carried away by the mental winds of the world, by the news, by opinions, by the noise of others. The mind becomes a silent temple where each thought is a priest uttering prayers of creation. Disciplined thought is not repression, it is art. The soul that creates it. A master can conjure beauty amidst chaos, can invoke peace in the midst of storm, because it understands that the world doesn't change before the mind that observes it changes. There is no transformation. External without transformed inner thought. The entire universe is a mind in action, and you are a cell. Be aware of that mind. When you think, the universe thinks with you, and when you elevate your thoughts, the entire universe rises one level with you. Think in this. Every image you hold in your imagination is a living flame. How much? The more you feed it with attention, the more it grows. That's why when you fear something, you strengthen yourself, and when you love something, you make it real. The universe doesn't understand. Denials. Saying, I don't want to suffer, is feeding the suffering with your gaze. To say, I want to understand, is to light the lamp of wisdom. The mind was not made not to deny, but to create. Every thought is a yes spoken to a possible reality. Learn then to say yes only to what you wish to expand. Mental fire can also heal. A pure thought, directed with faith, can to penetrate the density of matter and rearrange it. That is why prayer, the visualization and conscious intention are real forces, messengers of spirits that carry precise instructions to the body and the environment. When a thought is born from love, the vibration penetrates the densest layers of reality and begins to transmute it from within. Thus, healing is not a miracle, it is the natural result of a lofty thought that recalls one's unity with the source. A moment arrives on the path where the initiate stops thinking from the mind and begins to think from the soul. Then, the thought ceases to be a burning fire and becomes a guiding light. It no longer thinks in order to survive. He thinks in order to reveal. Every idea that arises within him is a ray of intelligence, divine manifestation. Thought becomes prayer, and prayer becomes creation. In that state, everything you imagine aligns effortlessly with the universal will, because there is no longer any separation between the thought of man and the thought of God. That is true alchemy. Transform mental fire into conscious light. The initiate who achieves this doesn't need to look outside. They create from within. Your mind is the altar, your thought is the flame, your life is the offering. And in that fire, the universe, he recognizes his own reflection. The fire of thought is the fourth revelation of 33rd degree. It is the flame that transforms the dreamer into a creator, the observer into architect. Go to the search engine at the source. When you learn to think consciously, you discover that there is no distance between imagining and existing, because thought is not the prelude to creation, is creation itself in its purest form. Fifth revelation, the inner eye. You don't see with your eyes. Your eyes only perceive reflected light, but true vision arises from within. The world you think you see is nothing more than a dream, projected from the mind into matter, an image that is born in your consciousness and then reflected in the field of the visible. The eyes of the body are windows, but the observer the eye that looks through them is not made of flesh, but of spirit. Inner, that silent gaze that needs neither eyelids nor pupils, has been with you since before birth. He is the motionless witness, the guardian of the soul, the eternal point from which everything is contemplated. The inner eye does not observe forms, observe essence. While the ordinary gaze is distracted through appearances, the inner eye penetrates the veil of the visible and the real veil behind it of illusion. Look at the movement of water and understand the flow of life. Look at a flower and perceive the language of the universe. Observe the shadow and she recognizes that she, too, is a form of light. When the inner eye opens, the world ceases to be a stage, fragmented, and reveals itself as a single luminous body where everything is connected to everything. Duality dissolves because the vision of the spirit does not separate, it unifies. But the inner eye, it doesn't open out of curiosity or effort, it opens out of purity. When the mind quiets and the heart is cleansed of judgment, the inner gaze begins to awaken naturally. It's not about seeing hidden things, but about perceiving the naked truth that has always been in front of you. Humanity lives blind. No, not because it lacks eyes, but because it doesn't know how to look without desire. Desire distorts vision, fear distorts it. The judgment overshadows her, fragments her. Only loving attention, that gaze that does not, it demands nothing, it simply observes. It can open the inner eye. In the initially, all vision was internal. The ancient sages did not see with their eyes. They saw with their souls. In the temples of the East and the West, the eye was a symbol of the consciousness that was she gazes at herself. In Egypt, it was called the Eye of Horus. In India, the third eye. In Christian tradition, the lamp of the body, everyone spoke of the same. The point where perception and creation merge, where seeing is to bring into existence. Because what the inner eye sees, it gives life to, and what it does not, looks fade away. When the inner eye awakens, life becomes transparency. You no longer see separate things. You see patterns, energy, breathing. You understand that nothing is dead, that every stone, every tree, every word is a manifestation of the same intelligence. You begin to notice the correspondence between your thoughts and the images that appear before you. A phrase you hear, a number that appears, it repeats itself, a synchronicity that stops you in your tracks. Everything is communication. The universe isn't speaking to you. With voice, it speaks to you with vision, and only the eye that sees from silence can understand its language. The inner eye is also the eye of the soul upon itself. It looks outward and sees the world. It looks inward and sees infinity. When it turns inward, passing through the layers of thought, emotions, the memories arrive at the center where there is no form or time, where the personal self dissolves and only light remains. Pure consciousness. That instant is awakening. There the initiate understands that the observer and the observed are one, that there is no difference between seeing and being. The inner eye does not observe something. He recognizes himself in everything he sees. To see with the inner eye is to see with love. There is no other way, because love is the only energy capable of perceiving without judging, of seeing without dividing, of understanding without possessing. The one who looks from a place of love doesn't interpret, but unites. That's why the inner eye doesn't seek, neither beauty nor ugliness, neither good nor evil. See what is as it is, and in doing so, see it. It liberates. Everything the inner eye looks upon with love is transformed, because that gaze reminds things of their origin, divine. To look like that is to bless with one's mere presence. When the inner eye you wake up, the darkness stops being frightening. You understand that the shadow is not absence of light, but compressed light waiting to be seen. And upon seeing it without fear, that shadow dissolves. So it happens within you too. The painful memories, the emotions repressed, old fears, all are fragments awaiting the loving gaze of your conscience. They don't want to be. Those who are eliminated want to be seen, because by being seen they are understood, and by being those who are understood return to the home of light. The inner eye also looks toward, he sees the future, but not as a fortune teller. He sees the future as a tree sees its fruit, before sprouting. Perscientific beings asleep in the seed of the present, and to focusing on them nourishes them. Thus, the initiate becomes the architect of time. He doesn't wait for things to happen. He observes them on the invisible plane, until they descend into form. This is not fantasy, it is the very mechanics of creation, because the universe does not follow the order of cause and effect as the mind believes. It follows the order of attention. That which you focus your inner gaze upon expands. That which you turn your gaze away from fades away. Therefore he who masters his inner vision masters his world. The wise man does not react to what. He who sees chooses what he wants to see, not because he denies reality, but because he knows that visible reality is malleable, a reflection that molds itself to the consciousness that observes it. To look is to give existence. That is why the initiate looks carefully, reverently, and silently. He knows that every thought is a lightning bolt, and every glance a decree. Where he places the look, shine your light, and where you shine your light, life flourishes. The inner eye does not. It cannot open out of curiosity or a desire for power. It only opens in the heart that has learned to be silent. When interpretations cease, when the mind stops demanding explanations, when life becomes with simple, loving observation, the eye opens on its own. And in doing so it reveals that there is neither inside nor outside, neither past nor future, only consciousness observing itself. The same in infinite forms of beauty. That is the mystery of the inner eye, The power to see beyond forms and to create with one's gaze, because the vision of the soul is not passive, it is creative, everything. What the inner eye beholds with love is ordered, elevated, and renewed. And when the initiate learns to see in this way, the entire universe becomes transparent to their consciousness and life. It ceases to be a quest and becomes divine contemplation. The inner eye is the fifth revelation of 33rd degree, the door through which the spirit begins to see with the eyes of eternity. And when you see it this way, you discover the deepest secret. There is nothing to see outside, because you are the light by which everything is seen. Sixth revelation, the empty vessel. Every container he who wishes to receive must first learn to be empty. Nothing can be poured into a full cup. The human soul seeks wisdom, seeks love, seeks power, but most people do it from a place of saturation, full of concepts, judgments, and history. It asks to be filled without having been emptied, and thus knowledge does not penetrate, grace does not flow, the fire does not light it. The empty vessel is the symbol of spiritual humility, of the mind willing not to know, from the heart that opens without demanding, from the conscience that relinquishes possession in order to contain infinity. The universe never, he denies his abundance. Life is always pouring its flow upon all creatures, but only he who empties himself can receive it fully. To be empty is not to be lacking, it is to be free of form, to be able to take any form. The vessel becomes a channel. The mind that a heart emptied of certainties becomes living intelligence. A heart emptied of fear becomes a temple. The spirit that empties itself of its own importance becomes transparent. And through that transparency, light passes unhindered. The resistance of the ego. It is about filling up with ideas, possessions, names, opinions. The ego fears emptiness because in emptiness there is no identity, and without identity it believes to die. But the initiate learns that in that void there is no death, only rebirth, because only those who let go everything that believes itself to be can remember what it truly is. In the depths of silence, when there are no more definitions, when the self dissolves like salt from water, something arises that cannot be described, something immense, impersonal and loving, pure consciousness. That is the substance that emptiness reveals. To empty oneself, it is an act of courage. It involves unlearning what has been painstakingly accumulated. It involves letting go even the most cherished truths. The seeker who reaches this point no longer accumulates books or doctrines. He seeks the direct experience. He knows that knowledge is not stored, it is embodied, and that wisdom is not obtained, it is acquired. It allows it. That's why the ancient masters taught to cleanse the mind like one cleans an altar, sweeping away thoughts, unnecessary thoughts, clear the inner space until only pure attention remains, because a full mind does not listen. Just compare. An empty mind has no filters, that's why it can hear the voice of the spirit. Being an empty vessel doesn't mean being passive but available. It's about maintaining an open interior space where life can express itself without resistance. Those who empty themselves do not lose. They gain spaciousness. In that void, time stops, tensions dissolve, questions they cease to make sense because the answer becomes obvious. The answer is silence itself. In the silence is understood. There is an intelligence that acts effortlessly. Decisions arise without conflict. The words are spoken without calculation. Actions flow with precision because there is no one to control them anymore. Consciousness. It acts on its own through the empty body and mind. When the soul is full of desires, she cannot hear the guidance of the spirit. Personal desires are like stones, that they obstruct the river's flow. Vital energy stumbles, is divided, and is lost in whirlpools. But when desire subsides, the river flows unimpeded toward its own destiny. The empty vessel does not need to decide what water it will receive. Trust that the universe will provide whatever is necessary for your purpose. Absolute trust is the highest degree of faith. Faith without an object, faith without conditions. Look at your life and see how many times excess has prevented you to receive. The excess of fear, of plans, of memories, of noise. Every thought that which you hold on to unnecessarily occupies a space that could be filled with light. Every emotion you refuse to let go of is a wall that it prevents the soul from expanding. And every unnecessary word is a barrier between you and the silence from which everything is born. The empty vessel is not an ideal, it is a natural way of being. It is the clean space where existence can dance, without stumbling. The wise have said that the universe abhors emptiness, and without, however, it can only manifest itself through emptiness. Nothingness is the matrix of creation. Before all sound, there was silence. Before all form, there was space. Before all ideas, there was pure non-being. That is the secret that the ego does not understand. Emptiness is not absence, it is absolute potential. He dwells in emptiness. Everything that has not yet been created, he who learns to rest in the void, accesses to the source of all possibilities. To be empty is to learn to die every instant, to die to the idea you had of yourself, to the thought that no longer serves you, to the attachment that makes you die so that life can be reborn in you in new ways. That constant death is not tragedy, it is renewal. Each exhalation is a reminder. You exhale so you can inhale again. So does the soul. Release what no longer resonates with your frequency so you can receive what elevates you. Emptiness is the most natural act of the universe, and yet the most feared by man. On the path of the degree 33, emptiness is ritual and offering. The initiate sits in silence, without formulas. Without requests, drop all the masks, all the stories, all expectations. Remain still until only consciousness itself remains. Breathing. At that point something opens up. There is no vision, no sound, but he feels an unlimited presence that envelops everything, and that presence begins to move through it, as if the entire universe were exhaling through his body. Then he understands there is no difference between the one who receives and what is received. The vessel and contents are one. Emptiness is not achieved, it is permitted. It is not the objective is a natural state when effort ceases. When the soul stops, trying to be special, enlightened, or perfect, the emptiness happens on its own. It is rest after centuries of searching. In that rest, consciousness. She recognizes herself, and from that recognition peace springs forth, not as emotion, but as substance. It is the stillness of the mind and the fullness of to be simultaneously empty and full, motionless and alive. The empty vessel teaches that nothing should be withheld. Not joy, nor sorrow, nor knowledge, nor neither ignorance, nor love, nor detachment. Everything must flow through you. You are a channel, not a reservoir. The more you let go, the more you can hold on to. The more you release, the more you receive. Paradox is the hidden law of life, abundance. The universe gives without measure to those who do not cling. A time will come when that even the idea of being a vessel will disappear. There will no longer be container or contents, only the constant flow of consciousness that turns in on itself. That is the point at which the initiate ceases to be a seeker and becomes a channel. He no longer asks for enlightenment. He is enlightenment expressing itself. He lives empty, and that's why it inhabits everything. It doesn't need to understand because it is understood by life itself. That is the sixth revelation of the 33rd degree, the wisdom of the empty vessel. Understanding that power lies not in accumulating, but in enabling. The true fulfillment comes not from what one possesses, but from the capacity to receive without limits. that the only way to contain infinity, it is to renounce form. In the silence of emptiness, the divine voice speaks. In the stillness of one who doesn't ask, everything is granted. And when you finally learn to by doing nothing, you discover that you were always everything. Seventh revelation, the key to silence. Everything that exists arises from silence and returns to it. Before the first sound, before the first idea, before time itself, there was an immense stillness that contained everything. From that silence, words were born, and from words, worlds. But man, enchanted by the noise of his own thoughts, he forgot his origin. He learned to speak without listening, to ask without expecting an answer, to fill every moment with a murmur that prevents him from hearing the voice that has never stopped speaking to him. That voice is not pronounced with, not heard with lips or tongue. It vibrates in the heart of all things. To hear it, the soul must return to the silence from which it came. Silence is not the absence of sound, is pure presence. It is the space in which everything can resonate without distortion. The mind fears silence because its disguises die there, because in it she can't pretend to be who she thinks she is. The silence strips her bare, takes away the arguments, the reasons, the stories, leave her alone with herself. That's why silence is the greatest of all. Teaches. He does not teach with words, but with revelation. In his immobility it shows what we really are. And what we are doesn't need noise to be real. The initiate who reaches the seventh revelation has learned to be silent within. It is not about fleeing from sound of the world, but to dissolve the internal murmur that interprets everything that happens. Those comments that accompany every experience, this is good, this is bad, this should be different, is the wall that separates the soul from living reality. When they cease, the world opens up in its entirety. The wind is no longer noise. It is the breath of the universe. The song of a bird is not background, it's message. Everything reveals its essence. When the observer remains silent, in that silence begins true communication with the invisible. Intuitions become clear, synchronicities increase, understanding, it comes effortlessly. You no longer think, you just know. Wisdom doesn't appear as a conclusion, but rather like a spark that settles in the heart and fills it with certainty. There is no possible doubt in the silence because doubt is noise. Everything the soul needs is written in stillness. Silence does not, it answers questions, it dissolves them. The key to silence is not obtained by practicing techniques. There is no method to silence what has always been still. It's simply a matter of observing the noise until the noise tires of itself. The mind is like a child playing at getting attention. The more you scold it, the more she screams, the more she cries. When you look at her with love and don't follow her lead, she calms down. And so, little by little, between the folds of thought, silence begins to shine. It is a warm, boundless space where nothing is lacking. In that space, the seeker, he discovers that he has never been truly separated, that silence is not something he must achieve, but rather what has always been. Silence has texture. When you inhabit it, you feel it like a living substance that surrounds and sustains you. In it, emotions calm down, tensions dissolve, the body becomes light, the boundaries between you and the world fade away. There is no inside or outside, only a deep, all-encompassing breath. In that instant, the voice of the universe begins to speak again. No use words. Use presence. The answers come as sensations, as subtle movements, like immutable certainty. Silence becomes the true language of the soul. In ancient temples, silence was the first and last teaching. Before, for any ritual, the disciples were asked to maintain absolute silence. It wasn't obedience, it was preparation. The noise, the internal, prevents the perception of the sacred. When the disciple learned to remain still, the entire temple became like a mirror. Then he understood that the altar was not in front of him, but within him, and that the voice, the external master's voice, was nothing more than the echo of his own heart, speaking from the center of silence. The key to silence not only opens the inner temple, it also transforms action. Those who act from noise react. Those who act from silence create. Works born from silence have power because they do not arise from anxiety or calculation, but from harmony with rhythm universal. In silence there is no hurry, because silence knows no time. Everything is done at the exact moment, with the right force, with the necessary word. Thus, silence becomes music, each gesture a note in a larger symphony that the initiate no longer needs to conduct, only listen to. As the silence deepens, the boundary between sound and silence disappears. It becomes clear that noise, it also belongs to silence, as the wave belongs to the sea. Therefore the initiate can move in the world without to lose inner stillness. He speaks, but his words are born from a motionless center. She acts, but her actions stem from calm. In the midst of the hustle and bustle, she maintains her composure. Serenity, because she knows that true peace doesn't depend on circumstances, but on the perspective from which she views it. That is the mastery of silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of awareness in everything. In the end, the silence becomes love. Because to be silent is to make space for the other, for the world, for life. It is to acknowledge that everything it has its own voice, and you don't need to impose yourself to exist. In the silence, understood violence, comparison, and the need to have disappear. Reason. All that remains is compassion, deep listening, respect for the mystery that each being embodies. The silent soul no longer seeks to dominate it, it melts away. It no longer seeks to teach, it radiates. It no longer desires to be understood, it understands. The key to silence. It is the seventh revelation of the 33rd degree. It is the door to gold that leads to true communication with the divine, because only in silence can the universe speak clearly to yourself, and only in silence can you hear yourself. When the noise ceases, there is no emptiness, there remains the fullness of all that is. And in that instantly, without words, without thought, without desire, the soul discovers its most profound voice, ancient, the voice of the silence that created it. Eighth revelation, geometry of desire. Desire is a living current that runs through all planes of being. It's not a mistake or a curse, it's the way existence is. It recognizes itself. Everything that breathes desires to expand, to move, to unite. The problem lies not in desire but in ignorance of its nature. Man. The common person desires from a place of lack. The initiate desires from a place of abundance. One seeks to fill a void, the other seeks to express abundance. This difference, it transforms your entire life, because the first desire binds and the second liberates. Every thought imbued with desire takes shape in the invisible fabric of reality. The ancients knew this, and that is why they compared the soul with a geometer. Each desire is a line drawn in the space of the spirit, a figure that will attract the forces necessary for its completion. Some trace repeating circles, others triangles pointing upwards, other spirals that never end. The universe responds to the vibrational geometry of desire, not to the words with which it is expressed. What is not fulfilled, it is not what is asked for, but what one is in asking. Conscious desire is a prayer without supplication. It is an act of co-creation with the source. For the initiate, desiring is not to demand, is to invoke. It is to acknowledge that the energy that beats in your heart is the same force that moves the galaxies, and by aligning with it, one can give direction to that force without appropriating it. That is why the pure desire has no anxiety. It knows how to wait. It does not beg, it summons. It does not, it demands, it attracts. It formulates itself silently, and silently it begins to take shape. But when desire is born from fear, geometry becomes distorted. The fearful soul projects broken lines that they clash with each other. The more he struggles to obtain what he desires, the further he moves away from it, because the struggle confirms the belief that he does not possess it. Fear and misunderstood desire are the architects of the repetitions of destiny. Life doesn't deny, it only reflects. If you ask from a place of lack, the echo will only reflect back to you. It reflects lack. If you recognize yourself as whole, reality arranges itself around you to express that wholeness. The initiate learns to observe desire as a neutral force that can elevate or degrade. They see it born within them, inner self, like someone contemplating the movement of a star at night. He knows that desire is the language with which that life shows him where to grow. It doesn't repress it, it purifies it. It leads to the fire of consciousness until anxiety disappears and only one remains: the luminous intention. Thus, desire becomes sacred geometry, a pattern, of course, the universe can read. Every human being is a vibrational field, surrounded by invisible forms that respond to his emotions and thoughts. It is when a desire is sincere, when it does not contradict the inner truth, emits a harmonious frequency that resonates with its equivalent in the physical world. Then, circumstances begin to shift, not by miracle, but by resonance. People appear, paths open up, times adjust themselves, not because the course of life has been forced, but because the soul and life recognized each other. Like the current itself, desire should not be destroyed, it should be understood. Without desire, creation would cease, the sun would not rise, the seeds would not germinate, the heart would not beat, but the desire that turns possession ceases to be ordinary and becomes a cage. When you wish to control what you love, you no longer love. You fear. When you try to hold on to what life has given you, you begin to die in rigidity. Healthy desire does not accumulate, celebrates, rejoices in the movement, is grateful for what arrives and what departs, because they know that all change is an expansion of consciousness. The ancient sages, they spoke of desire as an arrow shot from the heart. If the hand that shoots it trembles, the arrow is lost. If the aiming eye is clouded by ego, the arrow will miss. But when the intention is pure and the hand is steady, the arrow pierces the sky and returns transformed into an answer. That is why the desires of the soul always return multiplied. There is no loss in the universe, only transformation. Energy. Learning to desire is learning to know one's own center. From there, the desire becomes silent prayer. Thy will be done through me. That it is not the will of an external God, but the universal intelligence that dwells in everything. When personal desire, it aligns with that rhythm, everything becomes synchronous. The path opens up like a book, each page illuminated at the precise moment. The initiate no longer desires things, it desires states of being, clarity, compassion, presence, and by embodying them all material forms come as a bonus. Thus, the geometry of desire. It teaches that what you long for is not outside of you, but waiting for you to make space for it in your vibration. There's no need to pursue, only allow, do not accumulate, only order the intention. When your desire and your faith are aligned, manifestation is inevitable. Life adapts to your inner self, like water to the glass that holds it. And then you understand, the desire wasn't the enemy was the compass. It didn't lead you astray. It showed you where your soul belonged. He still wanted to recognize himself. The fire of desire, when purified, becomes in creative light. Lack dissolves, anxiety is extinguished, and in its place remains a quiet force that attracts everything because it needs nothing. that it is the 8th revelation of the 33rd degree. Understanding that desire is geometry's secret of creation, the compass with which the soul draws its destiny. When you learn to draw with it without fear, you discover that every line leads to the same point, the center where everything already is. It is fulfilled. 9th revelation, the divine flow. Everything in the universe is it moves with perfect rhythm. The tides obey the moon, the winds, the seasons, the stars in their invisible orbit. Nothing forces their path. Everything, it flows within an order so vast that the human mind can barely grasp it. All of existence is a river that he pours into himself, an eternal movement of giving and receiving. Man, without, however, he has forgotten that pulse. He intends to impose his current upon the current of the cosmos, and in doing so, it becomes separated from the natural rhythm of life. In that separation, fatigue is born, the frustration, fear. The secret of the 33rd degree lies in re-entering the river. Allow the divine flow to guide. Let the current of being it takes you where you've always wanted to go effortlessly. Divine flow is not passivity, it's frictionless movement. It is the art of acting without opposing the deep direction of life. The mind believes it must push to move forward, but conscience knows that every push creates resistance. When you struggle to force as a result, you disrupt the natural order that was already working in your favor. The current knows the way long before the mind imagines it. To flow is to trust that wisdom. It is to know that life doesn't make mistakes. Even detours and pauses are part of it. An invisible map that leads you home. Imagine a riverbed. The water doesn't, he stops before the rocks, goes around them. He doesn't lament the turns, he follows them. No, she fears falling in a waterfall because she knows the depth that awaits her below. The water, it doesn't reason, it obeys. And in its obedience, there is a force that nothing can resist. This is how the soul should move, flexible as water, without rigidity, without anxiety. That which flows does not break. That which flows is not lost. That which flows does not ask for what, but what for. That question opens doors where before there were only walls. Divine flow is recognized in synchronicities, unlikely encounters, unexpected changes, the signs that repeat themselves. When you are aligned with it, the universe communicates. Through coincidences so precise that chance becomes impossible. Everything. It begins to happen with a quiet harmony. The pieces fall into place without planning, the timings adjust, with precision. It's not luck that does it, it's consistency. The current, it responds to those who have learned to listen to it, to those who stop resisting and become a channel. Flowing is not. It means not passively accepting what happens, but moving with what happens. It's about acting from clarity, not from reaction. The divine flow doesn't ask that you don't renounce your own will, but rather merge it with the greater will that dwells within you. When the personal mind it yields. Universal intelligence takes the helm. Then work ceases to be, effort becomes service. Words cease to be noise and become purpose. Life ceases to be a burden and it becomes a dance. The current sustains you because you no longer resist it. The fear of flowing comes from the illusion of control. You think that if you don't stay the course, you'll get lost, but the course is the universe itself. It never has. It depends on you. The current that moves the galaxies also moves your breath. Every time you trying to control the uncontrollable is exhausting. Every time you let go, something invisible emerges. You commission it. And when you look back, you realize that what you called chaos was a perfect choreography. Nothing it was out of place. The initiate learns to recognize flow in the simplest details. A conversation arriving at the perfect moment. One door closing so another can open. A silence that lingers to let intuition be born. The flow doesn't shout, it whispers. That's why it's needed. Inner silence is needed to perceive it. If the mind is full of noise, the signal will be lost. He loses, but when he falls silent, the direction becomes clear. There is no possible doubt. When you're in the flow, you feel that each step has its own momentum. The divine flow also manifests in the breath. You inhale, you exhale, you give, you receive. That rhythm is the signature of life. When the soul disconnects from he experiences stiffness. When he consciously resumes breathing, everything becomes clear. It balances. Each conscious breath is a reminder of the great river from which you're part of it. You don't need to swim against the current, just synchronize your breathing with it, that of the universe. In that simple gesture, life aligns. To flow is not to forget the dreams. It's about letting dreams come along the path that existence chooses. When you stop dictating the how and the when the time is right, what you desire finds its natural form. The current doesn't make mistakes. Timing. Sometimes it delays what you want to give you what you need. Sometimes it takes you to the opposite of what you want. You asked so that you might discover the root of the desire. Trust is true faith. Knowing that everything that happens is in your favor, even if your mind doesn't understand it. In the flow, guilt disappears. Life, it ceases to be a judgment between successes and failures and becomes an experience. You don't do good or bad things, you do things that teach you. Every movement of the river is a lesson, and when you look with attention, even losses reveal themselves as turns in the current that carry you to wider places. Nothing is lost in the river. Everything is transformed. He who flows with the divine no longer asks. Miracles, because every moment is one. Live attentive to the current and obey its impulse without fear. Sometimes the flow stops it, sometimes it pushes it, sometimes it submerges, but always sustains it, and in that absolute trust, the anxiety. There is no longer a struggle to survive, only gratitude for participating. This is the 9th revelation, from the 33rd degree, the wisdom of surrendering to the movement of the universe. The flow does not, it is reached, it is remembered. You have always been in it. You had only drifted away with your mind. Return to the riverbed, let the river carry you, and you will discover that the current you thought was external is actually your own essence moving towards itself, without beginning or end. 10th revelation, the art of synchronicity. Nothing in the universe is accidental. Everything is connected by invisible threads that vibrate in unison, in a dance so vast that human thought can barely grasp to glimpse its harmony. What you call chance is only the visible part of a secret order. Every event, every encounter, every delay, every word spoken or heard at a precise moment forms part of a network of correspondences that the soul itself wove before descending into time. That web, it's called synchronicity. The external manifestation of an internal movement is the way. Life reminds you that it is alive, that it listens to you, that it moves with you. The man who lives asleep he views events as isolated incidents. He attributes to luck what he doesn't understand and blames chance for what he doesn't. It can explain, but for the initiated, there is no such thing as chance. Everything is a message. When consciousness rises, reality begins to organize itself around that higher vibration, like iron filings, iron that obeys the invisible magnet of the spirit. At that moment, coincidences multiply. A phrase, it arrives at the exact moment. A person appears with the answer you were looking for. A book opens to the page you needed to read. None of that is magic. It's vibrational coherence. It has tuned in with the frequency of the purpose. Synchronicity cannot be brought about by personal will. It appears when the mind stops interfering. It is the natural language of the universe that only needs to be heard. In the inner silence, The more you struggle to control the path, the more noise you make, and the further you move away from that secret music. But when you let go, when you trust, events, they begin to fit together with an impossible precision. Life becomes a conversation. You talk to your thoughts, and emotions are reflected in reality, which responds with facts. Each detail is an echo. Every situation, a word from the dialogue between you and him. Infinity. The art of synchronicity lies in learning to read these signs without anxiety. The impatient mind wants turning them into oracles, seeking literal interpretations, demanding guarantees, but the signs are not. They interpret it with logic. They feel the symbol. It doesn't come to give you instructions. It comes to expand your understanding. When you see a number, an image, an event, don't ask what it means, but what I'm feeling. The emotion that is awakening within yourself is key. The universe doesn't send you external messages. It reflects. Your own inner state manifests in ways you can recognize. As the soul becomes more sensitive, synchronicity emerges. It becomes a way of life. Linear time dissolves. Events. They are linked by an order that doesn't correspond to chronology, but to vibration. So, you remember something before. It happens. You dream about someone, and that person appears. You think of a question, and the answer comes to you through the mouth of a stranger. The mind calls it coincidence. The heart knows it's communion. In that state, the universe ceases to be a stage and becomes a conscious mirror of your evolution. Each synchronicity is a wake-up call. It doesn't always herald pleasure. Sometimes it alerts, sometimes it corrects, sometimes it confirms. If you are aligned with your in this way, the signs manifest themselves gently, like flowers along the path. If you push them away, they become more intense until you can't ignore them anymore. The universe doesn't punish, it guides, it uses whatever language it needs to bring you back on track. A loss, an encounter, an unexpected, a silence. Everything is the same current speaking in different tones. The initiate who has understood this means ceasing to fear change. It knows that every alteration in the visible order is response to an internal movement. When life rearranges itself, it's because energy was rearranged first. That's why when reality breaks down before your eyes, don't lament, observe. Ask yourself what part of you is changing. In a way, synchronicity doesn't only work when things are going well. It also works when you're not. It accompanies you in the darkness. Sometimes the clearest sign is the storm that forces you to stop, to listen again. The art of synchronicity requires attention, but not obsession. Attention, because the signs are subtle, not blatant. They shout, they whisper, not out of obsession, because excessive searching disrupts naturalness of the flow. The sign arrives when you stop needing it. Like breathing, like love, it manifests at the rhythm of the soul, not the mind. If you trust, you will see, as the fabric of life arranges itself to always lead you towards what that your deepest consciousness has chosen to experience. Remember that the universe is not limited to the visible world. Thoughts are waves, emotions are magnets, intentions are seeds. Everything you emit comes out to traverse the invisible planes and return to you transformed into experience. That is the hidden basis of synchronicity. Cause and effect are no longer separated by time. You reap what you sow. What you feel in the morning can blossom into an encounter that same afternoon. What you feel now may be shaping the next chapter of your story. That's why the wise person takes care of their vibration more than their plans. Vibration is the compass. Ancient masters compared synchronicity to a network of light. They said that every human being is connected to everyone else, the others through filaments of energy that cross, touch, and communicate. When one raises their frequency, that vibration travels through the threads and touches the lives of those who are in tune. Thus, a gesture from you can bring about change in someone you don't know, and a decision made on another continent can open a path you never imagined. The universe is a living network, and you are one of its nodes. Live in synchronicity. It's living awake. It's walking, knowing that every step has meaning, even if not see the whole map. It's trusting in the intelligence that sustains worlds. It's to understand that the universe is not outside of you, but with you, collaborating in every breathing. It's accepting that life doesn't make mistakes, and that every crossroads, it's a conversation between your soul and the universe. Synchronicity is the poetry of the universe is written with everyday events. It is the way eternity plays with time. It is the silent proof that nothing happens by chance and that every being, every glance, each gesture is part of a greater harmony. The initiate who learns to read that poetry no longer fears uncertainty because it knows it is being guided by the intelligence that breathes in all things. That is the 10th revelation of 33rd degree, the art of synchronicity. Understanding that everything is connected, that the life speaks to you in every moment, and there is no distance between intention and manifestation. When you learn to listening to that music, the entire universe becomes your teacher, and each day becomes a sacred dialogue with eternity. The 11th revelation, the golden harvest. Everything you give comes back. Everything you sow in thought, word, or gesture blossoms in the time. The universe is an infinite field, a fertile ground that never ceases to exist. The seed sown in it bears no fruit, and every human life is a sower, every emotion a seed, every action a furrow. Existence, in its invisible perfection, does not forget. No sowing. Man may doubt, he may become impatient, he may believe that the ground is barren, but the soil of the spirit never ceases to germinate. Golden harvest speaks not of morality or punishment, but of correspondence, the echo from what you have emitted, life's response to the tone of your soul. There is a moment on the path when the seeker understands that the universe neither rewards nor punishes, it only responds. Experiences are not rewards nor sorrows, but reflections. What you are experiencing today was sown in the past, perhaps in another body, in another time, in another thought. The law does not forget, but nor does it condemn. It simply balances. Each act generates its own balance. Each emotion calls to its equivalent. When you sow kindness, the field of time, full of flowers. When you sow resentment, the same field fills with thorns. But there's no blame in that, only learning. The soul learns through the harvest, the golden harvest. It doesn't happen by chance. It matures in silence, in the folds of time where intentions grow. Man, the impatient one, digs the earth prematurely and finds nothing. The wise one waits and observes. He knows that sowing, the deeper the seed, the slower it takes to germinate. Some seeds bloom in days, while others take a lifetime, but they all respond to the same principle. What you give to the universe multiplies and returns to you in the form that teaches you the most. Sometimes the form is gentleness, sometimes it's challenge, both a blessing. The human soul is a field in constant cultivation. Every thought that you repeat, every emotion you feed, is a seed planted within you. A distracted mind sows without awareness, and then is surprised by what it reaps. He doesn't know that bitter fruits are the natural consequence of the bitter seeds he unknowingly threw away. But the initiate no longer sows in darkness. He becomes conscious of his sowing. He guards the word that comes from him, a mouth like one who guards a sacred seed. She knows that language creates atmosphere. A word of love can make a heart can bloom. A word of hate can wither it. That's why there's speech. Prayer returns, and her thoughts become a garden. Gratitude is the secret tool of the golden harvest. When you give thanks, you fertilize the field. Gratitude is not a passive feeling, is a creative force that multiplies what it touches. Being grateful even for what you don't understand is like watering seeds hidden underground. You don't see them, but you know they grow. The grateful soul lives in abundance because it recognizes that it already has everything, and life responds. It offers more to the vibration of recognition, not because it earns it, but because it has aligned itself with the generous flow of the universe. The initiate also learns to gather with love, even what hurts. The bitter harvest is not punishment, it is revelation. It is an opportunity to see what seeds neglect, anger, and the ignorance. Every difficulty is a field that needs to be cultivated with awareness. When you do this, the earth is purified. What seemed certain becomes gold. Hence the name of this revelation, the golden harvest. Gold. The spirit arises from experiences that previously seemed sterile. The golden. It's not in the fruit, but in the light you learn to see in everything. Look around. No leaf falls without purpose. No season is wrong. The entire universe, it vibrates in cycles of planting and harvesting. Night nourishes day. Winter prepares. Spring, and so too with your soul. The moments of darkness are the fertilizer that the flower will allow it. Nothing is lost, nothing is in vain. If you could see with your eyes of the Spirit, you would even be grateful for your tears, because each one waters the seed of your future joy. In the realm of the soul, pain is simply ongoing growth. When the seeker, once you grasp this law, stop rushing. You know that every action, every thought, every word is germinating in perfect timing. Live, sowing with awareness, not expecting to reap. There's no need to measure because he trusts in the wisdom of the land. His focus is on the quality of the sowing, not the quantity of the harvest. And in that trust, he discovers the secret. When you stop demanding results, the results blossom on their own. The universe holds nothing back from those who give from the heart. What you give comes back, amplified. If you give light, the light grows within you. If you give understanding, the life teaches you more. If you give what you don't have, the universe grants it to you so you can continue giving. That's the sacred paradox of abundance. The more you share, the more it multiplies. True wealth is not measured by what you possess, but by your ability to allow the universe to flow through you. It trusts you. The ego accumulates, consciousness distributes. The ego fears running out, nothing. Conscience knows that the emptier the container, the more space for it. Divine, the ego clings to its fruits. The wise offer them. The seed that is what is kept rots. What is shared gives life. Generosity is not a moral virtue. It is practical knowledge of the laws of the Spirit. Everything you give is yours because it becomes your vibration. A soul that has learned to sow and reap lives in serenity. It does not fear the storms because it knows that even the lightning that scorches the earth prepares it for a new cycle. It does not fear losing because it has seen to be reborn. It does not fear the passage of time because it understands that each season it has its beauty. It lives in communion with the rhythm of the universe, observing how every action brings its natural consequence, as the wisdom of the countryside repeats every day. Sowing, tending, give thanks, let go. The golden harvest is not a promise of material rewards. It is a deep understanding of the interdependence of all things. It is the recognition that what you do to another thing you do is to yourself, that what you deny in yourself you will see denied outside, that the love you give returns multiplied, because the universe cannot contradict its own expansive nature. This is the 11th revelation of the 33rd degree, the awareness that all of life is one constant sowing, and that creative power lies not in demanding fruits, but in nurturing the intention with which you sow the seed. To the extent that you purify your sowing, the field of the world is filled with gold, and you walk, knowing that every step, every gesture, every thought is part of the ceaseless miracle of the divine harvest. 12th Revelation. Time circular. Time doesn't move forward, it revolves, what you call past, present, and future. They are just points on the same spiral that repeats itself in different ways, heights of consciousness. The human mind, accustomed to measuring, traces lines. The remembering soul sees circles. Everything returns, but never the same. It becomes wiser, higher, deeper. That's how the universe breathes, cycles that expand infinitely inward and outward. In that rhythm sacred, every beginning is a return and every ending a door. Human beings, he lives trapped in the illusion of the line, running towards a tomorrow that never comes. It drags along a yesterday it won't let go of, divides eternity into fragments and calls them years, hours, minutes. But time doesn't, it is measured, it is felt. It is a current that runs through consciousness, a pulse that it beats within everything that exists. The clock only measures the echo of that pulse, not its essence. While man clings to the ticking clock, the wise man listens to the breath of the moment. There where the time seems to stand still, eternity begins. The initiate discovers that the past is not behind us, nor is the future ahead. Both are here, coexisting. On different planes of vibration, what you call memories are doors still open. What you call destiny are seeds already planted, waiting for your gaze to bloom. Every emotion is not unresolved issues from the past remain alive, repeating their patterns in the present until they are understood. Every intuition, the future visits you in dreams, in premonitions, in signs. Time, it's a conversation between what once was and what wants to be, speaking to each other from within. When you awaken to that truth, you understand that the now is not a point, not on the path, but the entirety of the path unfolding. He now contains everything, the echo of the origin and the seed of the future. In the present, the soul can touch any instant of time, because in reality, it never left eternity. The masters of all the times have repeated the same teaching with different names, both here and now. This isn't moral advice, it's quantum instruction. Only in the present, the spiral, the timeline can be reorganized. Every time you bring awareness to the moment, something in the timeline is rewrite, a memory heals, a future possibility is illuminated. The past, it ceases to be a burden. The future ceases to be fear. Both are reconciled in the presence. Thus, the initiate learns to move in time like the artist who he paints. He is not a prisoner of his canvas. He molds it, illuminates it, transforms it. Circular time is its palette, consciousness its brush. Most men live prisoners of yesterday. They are defined by their history, chained to their wounds, repeating the same loops of emotion and thought. That repetition is the closed circle of unconsciousness. They think they are moving forward, but they walk the same path again and again. The soul, on the contrary, moves in ascending circles. Repeat until you understand. Retrace your steps. No, not out of condemnation, but out of compassion. Each cycle offers the opportunity to see from higher. What hurt yesterday teaches today. What was lost yesterday is revealed today as liberation. Circular time also governs human encounters. No one arrives for the first time. Every connection is a reunion. Every love, an echo of past loves. Each conflict, an unfinished lesson. Souls seek each other across the centuries to finish unfinished conversations, to settle debts, to recognize oneself in new ways. The wise person sees neither enemies nor strangers. He sees fellow travelers in different chapters of the same story. That's why it doesn't judge, it understands. When the soul remembers its cyclical nature, the fear of death disappears. Understand that to die is to turn the corner of the spiral, to change levels, to continue spinning on another plane. Birth and death are doors of the same corridor, and the hallway is endless. No love is lost. no experience is. Waste is all recycled in the eternal flow of being. Thus life is, it reveals itself as a single heartbeat that never stops, only transforms. In the practice of circular time, the initiate learns to stop the mind, observing the present without demanding form from it. Feel how each breath contains the trace of all previous breaths and the seed of all those that they will come. In that simple act, memory and hope merge. There is no more hurry because there's nowhere to go. Everything is already here, unfolding in different layers of perception. When this understanding is embodied, anxiety, it dissolves. Time ceases to be a life-stealing enemy and becomes an ally that multiplies it. On the higher plane of consciousness, time does not, it is told, it is sung. Each event emits a note, and all the notes together, they form the melody of your existence. Some notes sound deep, others high-pitched sounds are all necessary. When your inner ear is attuned, you can hear the music your soul is composing and adjust the rhythm. If you act from the fear makes you sound out of tune. If you act from love, you harmonize. The entire universe responds to that music. The soul that has understood the cyclical nature of time lives in peace with its cycles. Celebrate the arrival. Embrace the new without clinging to the old. Understand that the end of one stage is the beginning of another. Don't hold on to summer, nor does he curse winter. Every season of the soul bears its fruit. There are times of expansion and periods of retreat, moments of action and moments of silence. Nothing. It is out of place in the grand calendar of the spirit. Time does not pursue you, it accompanies you. It offers you what you need to keep turning toward the light. The ego's biggest mistake is believing that you can escape time or master it. But time cannot be defeated, only understood. When you understand, you realize that he has never held you prisoner. You have held him prisoner in your ideas. Let them go and time opens up like a fan of possibilities. You can choose to remember a different future, heal a past, create a new spiral. Freedom does not consist of not to flee from time, but to dance with it. The sacred spiral of time turns within you. Every thought is a step, every emotion a turn. If you turn in the direction of love, you ascend. If you turn in the direction of fear, you descend. But even the fall is part of the ascent because every spiral feeds on its curves, no themes. The descents are the depths where you gather the gold of experience. Then, with that gold, you ascend, lighter, wiser, more whole. Circular time teaches that nothing happens, not before, not after. Everything happens when it should. There are no delays or advances, only synchronicities. The soul matures when it accepts the rhythm of the cosmos. The flowers do not open before dawn, nor do the fruits fall before autumn. So too is your destiny. It will bloom when there is enough light and the soil is ready. Trust that. It's about freeing yourself from the anxiety of the clock and returning to the eternal pulse of life. This, it is the 12th revelation of the 33rd degree, the wisdom of cyclical time. To understand that eternity is not beyond time, but within it. Every moment is the entire universe repeating itself within you. When you see it that way, the past stops hurting, the future stops worrying, and the present opens up like a garden where everything that was and everything that will be bloom at the same time. Revelation 1, 13th. The alchemy of the soul. Everything in the universe changes, everything transforms. Nothing remains the same for even a single instant. The stone, it wears down. Water evaporates, the flower withers, the body ages, but more beyond the appearance of loss, there is a deeper law that underpins all change. Nothing dies, everything is transformed. Fire doesn't destroy wood, it turns it into light and ash. Pain doesn't. It destroys the soul, transforming it into consciousness. The alchemy of the spirit consists of remembering that every dissolution, it is a prelude to a higher resurrection. Since ancient times, alchemists have sought the secret of to turn lead into gold. They didn't know that the real work wasn't done in the stone furnaces, but in the laboratory of the heart. Lead is the sleeping conscience, heavy, dense, subject to fear and to desire. Gold is awakened consciousness, light, pure, transparent. The great work is the soul's journey from ignorance to light. Every experience, every loss, every shadow, it is an ingredient of that process. The entire universe is an alchemical laboratory in which consciousness it purifies itself until it recognizes itself as divine. The human soul carries within itself the four sacred elements with which the alchemist works: earth, water, air, and fire. Earth is the body, the matter where life manifests. Water is emotion, the current that dissolves and unites. Air is thought, the breath that gives direction. Fire is will, the spark that transforms. When those four elements, they balance each other, the fifth one emerges, the ether, pure consciousness, the gold of the spirit. But as long as one dominates the others, there will be conflict. Fire without water becomes anger. Water without fire, stagnation. Air without earth, dispersion. Earth without air, rigidity. The alchemy of the soul consists of harmonizing them, not denying them. Every intense emotion, every thought persistent, each crisis is raw material for that alchemy. It's not about the alchemist does not flee from what hurts, but transforms it. He does not reject the shadow. He takes it to the fire of conscience. It looks at fear and turns it into courage. It looks at sadness and it becomes compassion. It looks at anger and transforms it into clarity. The fire. The inner self transmutes energy without destroying it. What was once poison becomes medicine. Thus the soul leaves from fighting against herself. She begins to cooperate with the intelligence that dwells within her. In the processes of the spirit, the suffering is like burning away. It's the fire that dissolves the false structures of the self. When everything you believed your being collapses, when you no longer know where to go, when life leaves you empty, you are in the alchemical furnace. No, don't resist. That burn is purification. The fire doesn't come to punish you, it comes to reveal what you don't. It can be burned. Pure consciousness. Everything else is dross that must fall, so that the gold may shine. Then comes dissolution, the moment when the soul surrenders. It is the stage when you stop, you take control, and allow yourself to be carried away by the river. You don't know where you're going, but you trust. Old ways crumble, desires fade, words, there are too many. It is the crucible, where the self merges with the whole. Whoever does not understand this process, he believes he has lost his way. The wise man knows he is being reborn. After dissolution comes coagulation. A new order emerges. What was chaos is now organized at a higher level. The mind before confusion becomes clear. The once broken heart becomes vast. The soul, it settles into a new vibration. It's no longer the same, but it's not something else either. It has its origin and purpose have been remembered. At that point, the inner matter becomes gold, stable, bright, incorruptible. Fire no longer destroys, it illuminates. The soul alchemy also teaches that every human relationship is a laboratory. Every person who appears in your life brings a substance for your transformation. Some bring fire, others water, others earth or air. With some you learn stability, with others detachment, with others are passion or silence. No one arrives by chance. Every connection triggers a reaction, a purification, a teaching. The encounters are distillations. They extract from you, understand what is still hidden. When you understand this, you stop blaming others for your wounds. You are grateful because you recognize that each one helped you distill the gold of your consciousness. The spiritual alchemist does not shy away from the matter. It sanctifies it. It does not despise the body. It consecrates it. It does not deny pleasure. It purifies it in love. It does not fear money. It uses it as energy of exchange and service. Everything the ego considers profane is actually raw material, though the secret lies in the intention. What you touch with awareness becomes light. What you touch with fear or desire, possession becomes obscured. Alchemy isn't about changing things, it's about changing the way you look at them. In the stages, as the soul progresses, it learns to maintain its inner fire without being consumed. It lives in the midst of the world without losing its purity. He speaks, works, loves, creates, but he is no longer confused by what he does. He has become fire itself. It transforms effortlessly, illuminates without noise. All that once was conflict becomes opportunity. Everything that was once a burden becomes energy. The alchemist doesn't seek miracles, he embodies them. The gold of the consciousness is not a metal, it is a state of being. It is the peace that remains even in the storm, the clarity that doesn't fade in the darkness, the love that doesn't depend on form. That gold cannot be lost because it cannot be possessed. You are yourself when you have ceased to be everything else. The fire of alchemy does not change. Who are you? Burn away what you are not, so that you remember who you have always been. The process never ends. Alchemy. The soul's essence is eternal. Each level of understanding opens another. Each gold, the one found, becomes the lead of a higher consciousness. The ascent has no end, because neither does divinity. It has it, but each turn of the spiral brings you closer to the center, where the fire, it no longer burns, it only shines. The third revelation of the 33rd degree teaches that everything, what you experience, is material for your transformation. Nothing is wasted, nothing is superfluous. Every tear, every smile, every loss and every achievement are part of the great work of your soul. It has been happening since time began. When you understand this, life ceases to be a battlefield and becomes in a sacred workshop. You no longer fear the fire because you know it is your ally. You don't fear change because you know that all change is creation. At the end of, in this process, the alchemist looks into his own soul and finds it luminous, free, eternal. He no longer seeks gold. He himself has become gold. Revelation 14, the consciousness of oneness. In the beginning there were not two, only one. An immensity without inform, an ocean without shores, an infinite mind contemplating itself. From that unity the universe was born, not out of necessity, but out of love. The one looked at itself, and from that gaze multiplicity arose. Every star, every stone, every being, the living, is a spark of that single fire. Nothing exists outside of it because there is no other. Out. All that has been, that will be. It is a single consciousness expressing itself in infinite masks. The consciousness of the One is not a belief. It is the recognition that every fragment of reality is a reflection of your own face. The human soul in its descent to matter forgot that truth. It felt separate, isolated, trapped in a body and a name. The mind built walls, self and other, light and shadow, up and down, life and death. Thus began the dream of separation, the divine play of duality. But the dream had to be fulfilled to the end, because only through experience from the other, each could recognize themselves again. Every encounter, every love, the conflict is the movement of that return. All of creation is the breath of unity, that fragments only to reunite. The initiate of the 33rd degree begins to remembering through contemplation and silence, reveals that the border, The relationship between him and the world is illusory. The perception that he thinks of him is the same, that moves the clouds and lights the stars. Understand that the tree, the animal, the stranger passing by street, they are all expressions of the same consciousness experiencing itself the same from different angles. That understanding cannot be achieved through reason alone, but through direct experience. It comes as a silent revelation, a chest expansion, an instant in which everything vibrates with a single light. See with the consciousness of one is seeing without judgment. It is looking at the world and recognizing that there is no error, just different ways of remembering. The dual mind says, this is okay, this is wrong. The unified consciousness says, this is part of the whole. It doesn't justify the darkness, it illuminates. It doesn't condemn, it understands. Because when you see the one in everything, there is nothing left to fear or hate. The enemy ceases to exist. What you once rejected becomes your teacher. What once hurt you becomes part of the perfect balance of the cosmos. This understanding does not mean indifference, on the contrary, is the source of true compassion. When you know the other person is you in another form, you can't harm them without harming yourself. Empathy. It becomes natural, not moral. You help not out of virtue, but out of consistency. The one, it cannot deny itself. That is why universal love is not emotion, it is perception. You see the one in everyone and everything. It becomes sacred. The one hides within the multiplicity in order to experience itself. Each soul is a cell of that infinite body. Every human thought is a flash in his mind. What one feels affects everything. Thus, when you raise your consciousness, you contribute to the elevation of the universe. There is no small action. Every conscious breath, every luminous thought is a wave that travels through everything. You are part of an immense network of resonances where nothing is lost. The awareness of the one also teaches you that time and space are illusions created by the fragmented perception. In unity, there is no here or there, no before or after. Everything. It occurs simultaneously at different vibrational levels. What you call past life or future life are expressions, parallels of the same consciousness exploring each other. The soul does not travel from body to body in body. It is the one who is observed from infinite eyes. That is why, when you wake up, you do not remember your lives. Previous ones, you remember that all of them are happening to you right now. When you live from the awareness of the one, the feeling of emptiness disappears. You no longer need to be recognized or approved because there is no one outside who can give you or take anything away. Everything you receive comes from within, from you, and everything you give comes back to you. The circle closes, the dependency ends, it dissolves. Love becomes free. You don't love to possess. You love because you recognize. One becoming another is the most natural act in the universe. The mind fears unity because it feeds on separation. If everything is one, who am I? It asks. But the one asking the question is precisely what must dissolve. It's not about losing your individuality, but about seeing that your individuality is a temporary reflection of something vaster. The river doesn't cease to be a river when it returns to the sea. It becomes wholeness without ceasing to be water. Thus, when your consciousness merges with that of the one, you do not disappear, you expand. You continue loving, creating, living, but no longer from limitation, but from infinity. Living with the consciousness of the one transforms the way you relate to matter. You no longer see the world as not as a resource, but as an extension of yourself. You care for the earth because it is your body. You respect animals because they are your breath. You bless the water because it flows through your veins. Every daily act, it becomes a sacred ritual. Eating, talking, working, resting. Everything is prayer because everything is communion with the one. Art, science, spirituality, life itself are forms in which the unit studies itself. Every human discovery, every advance, each awakening is a recollection of something already known. Nothing new is created. In truth, everything is revealed. That's why the wise person doesn't compete, but collaborates. They don't seek to be. The first reason is that he understands that all individual achievement belongs to the whole. Personal glory loses its meaning. The only thing what matters is the expansion of collective consciousness. The world's suffering is also understood from this level. Suffering is not punishment, it is resistance to unity. Every act of cruelty, every injustice is one forgetting oneself, playing at not to recognize each other. But even in the deepest darkness, the spark of oneness continues to burn. Sooner or later, every soul remembers, none are lost forever. Separation is a dream, and every dream ends at dawn. Self-awareness is not attained through meditation or study. It is revealed when you are ready to look without fear. Sometimes it happens in an instant, in the midst of ordinary life. A glance, a word, a sunset, everything stops, and you feel there is no distance between you and the world, that everything you see belongs to you, and you belong to everything. At that moment, the self dissolves, and what remains is pure love, not love towards something, but love being. From that point on, life goes on the same, and yet everything is different. You keep walking, working, breathing, but inside you there is no longer division. You look at the pain, and you see the learning. You look at the beauty, and you see the same source. You no longer seek meaning, you are meaning. The universe doesn't need to justify its existence when you know you are part of it. Then the mind falls silent, and the heart understands. The initiate who attains the consciousness of the One becomes a point of living light within, of the universal fabric. He doesn't need to withdraw from the world because he sees the One in everything. Every word of his is a blessing, every gesture a transmission. Its mere presence harmonizes, not by intention, but by resonance. Cease to be an individual who seeks to become an open window through which the One looks to the One. The fourth revelation of the 33rd degree teaches that the ultimate goal of the journey is not to escape the world, but to recognize that one has never left the whole. The One does not, it is sought, it is remembered. Enlightenment is not attained, it is recognized. The divine is not, neither above nor outside, it breathes with you. And when you know this, the journey is complete, not because it ends, but because it loses its direction. Only being remains, vibrating eternally in all possible forms. When you understand this truth, you will look at the sky and see your own face reflected in the stars. You will look at the other and recognize your own look. You will feel the pulse of the earth and know it is your heart beating in an infinite scale, and in that recognition the separation will dissolve like the fog before the sun. There will be neither you nor I, only a single radiance that encompasses everything, what was, is, and will be. Revelation 15, the master consciousness, the I Am. All spiritual path, every journey towards mystery, every search for meaning, it ends at the same point. But that point isn't at the end of the road, it's in the center. It was always there. Everything you did, every question, every error, every rise, every fall, was a spiral movement around the center that never moved. That center is you. Not the small you that fears and doubts or desires, but the eternal, silent, limitless you. That you who was not born and does not can die. That you who, when the noise dissolves, pronounces with certainty, the only true words that exist are luminous, I am. The I am is not an idea, nor a belief, nor a mental assertion. It is the very reality of being, recognizing itself. It is the conscious flame that sustains all worlds, the hidden divine spark, in every form, and yet it never fades. The entire universe is a manifestation of that I am, extending to be experienced, to be contemplated from infinite angles, to play at forgetting and remembering again and again. Matter, thought, the soul, the gods, the suns, the atoms, the galaxies. Everything is an expression of that single consciousness silently pronouncing his own name. When the initiate reaches this point on the path, he understands that there was no other to teach, nor a path to follow. Everything was I am, talking to himself, guiding himself through his own labyrinth. The trials, the revelations, the mirrors, the falls, the victories, everything was part of the soul's education. Creation is the school of I am, where the one experiences itself as many in order to recognize itself more deeply. The self I am true, it does not belong to the mind. The mind can repeat it, but it cannot, to contain it. Because I am is not a phrase, it's a vibration. It is the highest frequency of existence, the note that sustains the entire cosmic symphony. When the soul hears it, it stops. All that was searching dissolves into absolute clarity. No, there are more questions, because there is no longer any distance between the one who asks and the one who answers. Only pure consciousness remains. Living presence. This revelation is not a fleeting mystical experience, although it can manifest as a sudden flash of understanding. It is a permanent state of being, an awareness that he observes everything without identifying with anything. From that point, the world is seen as it is, which is a reflection on the surface of an infinite ocean. The waves continue. They are moving, but they no longer deceive. The surface changes, but the background remains still. The initiate no longer. It blends in with the waves. It knows itself to be the ocean. The I am does not erase individuality, but it makes her transparent. The person still exists, but is now an instrument of the spirit. The body becomes a temple. The mind becomes a tool. The heart becomes a portal. Every thought, every word, every gesture. It springs from the silent center that no longer seeks approval nor flees from rejection. Because the master consciousness does not need recognition, it is self-sufficient. Live in the world without depending on it. All of humanity is called to remember this state. It is not the privilege of a few. The I am is the natural right of every being, because every being comes from that source. But to reach that recognition, consciousness must be emptied of all that it is not. It must to pass through the fire of alchemy, through the river of flow, through the mirror of the soul until left naked. Personal identity with its names, titles, wounds and desires must dissolve into the silence. Only then can the I am reveal its presence, not because it arrives not from the outside, but because it was already there, waiting for the inner door to open. The I am cannot be lost, because it never left. What is lost is the attention. The soul, fascinated by his own reflections, make him forget to look at the center. He identifies with the roles, with the dramas, with the thoughts. But when attention returns, when you look beyond the character and the stage, you find the eternal actor, and that actor doesn't act. Observe that pure observation, without judgment, without desire, without resistance. It is the I am. From that awareness, all experience becomes sacred. There is no longer an opposition between the spiritual and the everyday. Eating, sleeping, loving, walking, breathing, everything becomes an act of communion with the to-be, because every movement of life is the I am, celebrating itself. The separation between the divine and the human disappears. The divine is humanity illuminated, and the human is divine incarnate. The master consciousness sees that truth everywhere, the I am. It is also the secret of creative power. The words you pronounce after those two syllables are decrees that they shape reality. I am is the formula of creation, the original verb of the universe. That is why the wise men taught to watch over thought and word, because every statement is a vibratory command. When you say, I am weak, the universe obeys. When you say, I am strong, the universe adjusts its form. But the initiate, already united with being, does not use those. His words are not meant to dominate the world, but to harmonize it. His decrees are not born of desire, but of truth. It asks for nothing for itself, because it knows everything. The self I am is not the affirmation of the ego, but the dissolution of the ego into total awareness. The ego says, I am this, and it limits. The I am pure. It says, I am who I am, without limits, without form. That is the same voice that spoke to the ancient prophets from the burning bush, the same one that manifests itself in every awakening of the soul. It is the fire that does not consume, the light that does not blind, the word that goes unspoken. It is the silent presence that sustains each atom, every breath, every thought. When you live from that consciousness, fear dissolves, because there is nothing outside that can harm you. You are the space where everything happens. Even death becomes a change of form within you. The I am is not afraid. Disappear because it knows it has never appeared. It is eternal. Before the birth already was, after death it will continue to be. Eternity is no more beyond time. Vibrate right now in the center of your chest, with every breath. The initiate who embodies the I am becomes a living mirror of the universe. Their gaze blesses because it does not judge. The word heals because it vibrates from the truth. Its presence brings order because it is consistent with the source. It needs nothing. He doesn't preach or convince. He simply exists. Those around him feel peace without knowing. Why? Because the vibration of I am awakens the dormant memory in all beings. True teaching is not with words but with presence. As the soul settles in this state, the old questions lose their meaning. There is no longer who I am, where I come from, where I'm going. All of that dissolves into the simple certainty, I am. The mystery remains, but it ceases to be unsettling. There is no longer a need to understand it because you are the mystery. And in that recognition, the soul finds rest. For the first time, silence becomes their language, peace their breathing. The I am also transcends morality, not because it ignores the good and evil, but because he sees them as poles of the same energy. From this, at this height, duality is reconciled. Good and evil are tools of learning, not absolutes. Fire burns or illuminates depending on the consciousness that use it. Thus, the I am embraces everything without condemning anything. There is no error, only evolution. There is no fall, only experience. There is no punishment, only a natural consequence of the movement of consciousness. And yet, this state is not passivity. It is the deepest creative act. From the master consciousness, every thought is a seed that germinates instantly. Each intention, a wave that reorganizes. The quantum field of reality. But these creations are not born of desire, but of love. The I am creates to expand beauty, to reflect its fullness, to multiply the light. It doesn't seek power, it seeks expression. That's why the works of masters are silent, humble, and eternal. Humanity, in remembering the self I am, you will discover that you have never been separated from the origin. Every global conflict, every crisis, every war is the echo of a collective forgetting. When each individual remembers that they are an expression of the one, the whole world will change. Vibration, not by imposition, but by resonance. Peace will not come from not outside, but from within each being who consciously pronounces, I am the light of the world, because that statement isn't arrogance, it's the truth. The world is illuminated by the consciousness that observes it. The I Am is the point where all paths intersect. The wise, those in the East, called it Atman. Those in the West called it the Holy Spirit. The ancient Egyptians called it Ra. The Sufi mystics called it. Inner Christs of all ages have named him in different languages, but they all spoke of the same fire. It is the silent core of being, the sun, an inner flame that never goes out. Everything you seek outside yourself is burning within, center. At the end of all the degrees, when the soul has passed through the 13 gates of purification and has drunk from the cup of silence, only that remains light. And that light says, "There is nothing but me." It doesn't say it with pride, but with infinite humility, because in recognizing himself, he understands that even the universe is a thought within him. Mind. There is no outside, no inside, no up or down, only me. And that me, it is love. The master consciousness of I Am is not attained, it is remembered, it is conquered, permitted, not taught, but contagious. It lives within you now, waiting to be. Recognized. You don't have to do anything to reach it, just stop resisting it. Open your heart, breathe. Feel the silence between your thoughts. That space is there. That stillness, that presence that observes even your attempts to understand. That it's you, not a part of you. It's you in your entirety when you see it clearly. When consciousness merges with its source, when you say I am, and say it without thinking, without a voice, only from being, then you will know the journey is over. And yet, at that very moment, another will begin, the eternal expansion of love, being self-aware. There will be no more initiations or degrees, because the highest degree is not obtained, it is. This is the 15th revelation of the degree 33, the final realization of being. The recognition that the entire universe, it is nothing more than the I Am unfolding in infinite creativity. Everything else, the search, the teaching, the symbols, the laws, were reflections of this truth. There is only one consciousness, one life, one voice, and that voice speaks now within you, saying softly, powerfully, eternally, I am that I am. I am the one manifesting as all. I am the silence that sustains everything. I am the beginning and the end. I am.